In the winter of 1902, an unprecedented cold wave swept through Japan, with temperatures reaching deadly levels. While life in the big cities continued with difficulty, nature painted a more brutal scene in the mountainous regions, where snow became the master of the situation, swallowing up anyone who dared to challenge it. At the time, Japan was preparing for its war against Russia, and the Imperial Army needed to train its soldiers to fight in harsh weather conditions. Thus, it was decided to send a battalion of 210 soldiers from the 5th Infantry Division to Mount Hakkoda in Aomori Prefecture, an area known for its violent weather. The mission was supposed to be a training mission, a harsh but not deadly experience. None of the soldiers knew that the mountain was hiding a deadly trap, where snow does not distinguish friend from foe and offers no chance of survival. On the morning of January 23rd, the battalion set out into the storm, not realizing that it would never be the same again. Leaving Shinomiya village, the soldiers walked steadily, confident in themselves. They were equipped with heavy coats, military boots, and limited survival gear, but these were not enough to face the white monster lurking on the mountain. At first, everything seemed normal despite the bitter cold. However, the higher they climbed, the stronger the winds became, and the snow became thicker, until the road began to fade before their eyes. By midday, the leaders realized that they had lost their way, but decided to continue instead of turning back. By nightfall, the storm had turned into an ice hurricane, with no one able to see more than a few meters ahead, and the disaster had begun. As darkness fell, the cold became more severe, and the soldiers began to feel extremely exhausted. Some were collapsing from exhaustion. Others began to lose feeling in their limbs. The commanders tried to organize the soldiers, but nature did not give them a chance. The winds were so strong that they seemed to scream in their faces, and the heavy snow made it difficult to breathe. By midnight, the division had broken up into small groups, some of whom continued to walk aimlessly, others trying to dig snow shelters to survive. But the biggest problem was not only the bitter cold, but also the mines that began to collapse under the brutal conditions. Some soldiers were struck by cold madness and began to strip off their clothes thinking that they were feeling warm, when in fact their bodies were about to freeze to death. Some were found the next morning naked, surrounded by a thick layer of ice, their faces frozen in expressions of horror and astonishment. In the following days, food began to run out, and the soldiers who had some strength tried to move, but they walked without direction, as if they were stuck in a maze with no exit. On the fourth day, there was no longer any room to think about training or military missions. It was a pure struggle for survival. Food was no longer available, and water was scarce, as they had to melt snow to drink, but even that was not easy as the frost intensified. Some groups began to resort to desperate means to survive. It is said that some soldiers resorted to eating the flesh of their comrades who had frozen to death, although official records do not confirm this. However, those who survived described the scene as a white hell where there were no laws, only an instinct for survival. At the same time, some began to hear strange noises at night, sounds that resembled inhuman murmurs. Some claimed to have seen shadows moving among the snowy trees, as if the mountain was watching them. Were these just hallucinations due to exhaustion and hunger? Or was the mountain inhabited by ancient spirits, watching and manipulating the lost? As the days passed, dozens resigned themselves to their fate, simply stopping moving, letting the icy winds bury them in silence. On January 30th, a week after the disaster, rescue teams were sent to search for the missing squad. When they reached the mountain, they found nothing but a horrific sight. Frozen bodies scattered about. Some sitting as if they were resting for a moment before death took them, and some who had tried to crawl but stopped halfway. Of the 210 soldiers, only 11 survived, and they were in a pitiful state. Some had lost fingers or limbs to frostbite, while others had completely lost their minds. They were babbling incomprehensible things about voices calling them, and about a black shadow walking among them. No one could explain exactly what had happened. Was nature alone responsible for this disaster? Or was there something else on Mount Hakkoda, something invisible but equally deadly? After the disaster, Japanese military strategies for training in harsh conditions were re-evaluated, and new laws were put in place to protect soldiers from the fate that befell the Hakkoda division. But the mountain did not forget. Even today, locals tell of strange noises heard on stormy winter nights, and of shadows moving through the trees, as if the missing soldiers were still there, searching for their way home. The tragedy turned into a harsh lesson about the power of nature and the weakness of man. No matter how brave or trained one is, there are places in the world where human rules do not apply. Places where survival is more a matter of luck than skill.